Now we are recording tonight's session, so it can be available post-session. I'm Ian Renard, I'm the GMS engagement lead at the RFU, and tonight we're focusing around the payment of players, and we've got some other colleagues with us on the call tonight. So Dave Stubley, who will be taking us through the payment of players presentation that he would like to share with you, and he will be supported by our head of discipline, David Barnes, and head of legal, Alice Lewis, and Chloe Burgess, who is one of our project managers within the RFU. They'll be supporting it in the chat, so feel free to pop anything in the chat. Dave, if you'd just like to move the slides on for me, you should be able to hear me. If you can't hear me, check your connection. Most people now use Zoom nowadays. I'm sure you're well fay with that. Ask in the chat function if you need help. We do have Chloe, Dave, and Alice to support. If you have a look at the chat, it's at the bottom of your screen. Usually it could be at the top sometimes, depending on the device. And just make sure it's set to everyone in the meeting so we can all see the chat and have a good inclusive session together. As I said, you do get different views on different devices, depending on your phone, tablet, or laptop or desktop. So just play around with the view to suit you. I have got live transcript on. You can hide that live transcript. Just click on that transcript icon for the options. You can turn it off or leave it on. And with that, I will hand over to Dave Stubley. I hope you enjoy the session. Please remember to add questions in the chat as we go along, and the team will answer those questions as best as possible. And we will have a chance for Q&A once Dave has finished presenting. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Ian, and welcome to everybody this evening. I'll take you through the session this evening and look to answer any questions in due course. It shouldn't last any more than 40 minutes, but we've got plenty of time if people need to ask questions as we go through. So please pop them into the chat. There are people there that can answer them. Obviously, I won't be able to see those to the end, but if we can't answer all questions this evening, we will come back out to you if we need to. So this evening is about the payment of players declaration and linked to Regulation 7. So just a bit of background, because I'm not quite sure where everybody is with this, but just a bit of a history lesson on this. So the payment of players declaration was introduced in 2018-19 under a reformat of Regulation 7, and it was run again for a second year in 1920. We also had at levels 3, 4, and 5 an HMRC project run by one of their units looking at payment of players at the same time, and they worked they were working with us quite closely. So we've also had quite a sort of a spotlight from government in that respect, which was positive, but also brought a real big spotlight in terms of what was happening in the game. Clearly, with the last couple of years and what happened last year, the payment of players declaration was disapplied for absolute obvious reasons. And what happened through 2021 was also a bit of a review of the Regulation 7, which was always planned, and changes were agreed by RFU Council last year on the back of that. And I'll go through a few of those tweaks in due course just to bring everybody up to speed. And as I say, the 21-22 declaration was open and reintroduced and was open on the 1st of March. Again, just to put this into perspective, this was the statement that RFU Council had in terms of how this was applied back in 1819, and just gives you a bit of a background of where that regulation came from, why the payment of players declaration came around. And it was very much around detrimental effect of payments within the community game, that it wasn't trying to say that you couldn't, but there was going to be some limits at certain levels, and anybody below a certain level would be discouraged, and there would be measures introduced to try and to help move that sort of, put that line in the sand in a sense. So that's the statements, and I think it's always useful to put that up front. Kind of gives you a background of where this had come from. So just really focusing on some of the tweaks and changes in the 21-22 season. Really most of them relatively straightforward. But first and foremost, there were some tweaks to the thresholds. I'll go through that detail in a bit more detail a little bit later. But effectively, the thresholds at level 3, 4, 5 were reduced slightly on the previous years. There was also some changes made to the submission declaration requirements, and this was based on sort of insight that we've had for the 2 years where we've had completion virtually at 100%. And so the first one, just to be aware of, and again I'll pick it up as we go through, is that currently the declaration applies to all teams who have a men's team playing in the leagues at level 3 to 7. And so it's inclusive that if they wish to retain RFU benefits, that they do fill it in. However, there has been a change. So if you are a club at level 8 and below, you only need to declare if you provide material benefit to players and or player coach. What is it and what it isn't? In fact, I'll do the Chinese way and go from the bottom up. In the first instance, this is not, and it sometimes gets referred to, it is not a salary cap. It is not something which that a club has and they can't go above it. It sets thresholds. It means that players can be paid. The decision to pay players entirely down to the club and the club committee. However, there are potential or possible consequences if you are above that threshold, and that links back to removal of RFU benefits. So those are the key sort of what it is, and just really stress that it isn't a salary cap. It isn't something which has got a hard cap, which means you can't go above it. Entirely down to individual clubs to make that decision as they see fit. But if you remember back to the statement, that was where that's where this is being put together from. So I said that the thresholds are changed slightly, but this is just to reiterate what they currently are for this season. So at the men's, you can read that slide, but effectively the men's level 3 is £250,000 in terms of gross payments. Level 4 is 125,000, and level 5 is 50,000. They are all slight decrease on the previous declarations, and you can see that includes payment to include payment of player coaches, save the only 12,500 of the cost of each of the first and second player coaches will be excluded in calculating whether or not the threshold has been exceeded. But effectively, concentrate on the total amounts there. That are the thresholds that are set. But in terms of level 6 and below, if the default position there is actually a 0. However, if clubs have a player coach, and what I mean by a player coach is somebody that is paid both to coach and to play. If it's just being paid to coach, then it's not captured here, but that would allow you to have a maximum of £10,000, of which 50% could be towards playing duties, so i.e. 5,000. So that's the level 6 and below threshold. So what in regulation 7, there's also defines what the potential loss of RFU benefits are if you are above the threshold or you are need to fill it in but you don't. These are some of the potential loss of benefits, and they are defined within regulation 7. If they're not defined within regulation 7, they do not apply. So right first and center, this does not include tickets, and it has no effect on the insurances that the RFU. I get asked that question quite a lot. It is what is defined within regulation 7. Just really briefly, and it will be down to the individual club, and the loss of entitlement would be where it's applicable. So it could be travel funding or long distance allowances. It could be the supplemental ticket pot. It could be any of the RF Rugby Football Foundation, but more often than not now it's RFU grants or interest-free loans. At level 3 and 4, it would see a loss of subsidised match official costs. It also means that if you're using an RFU AGP, you would lose the subsidised rates. It also would mean that if funding that is made available to CBs via the RFU and is used as club grants would not be available. And then there is a catch-all, any other RFU cash grants or loans as decided. So those effectively are the loss of benefits as defined, and they only really apply if you are above the threshold or you should be filling a declaration in and you haven't done it. So those are the things that could penalise, would be the penalise, things that will come that you wouldn't get if you didn't adhere to that regulation. So just moving on to the declaration itself, further on into the presentation, it will take you through how you do it, where on the through GMS, etc. But in terms of declaration, what would be expecting, what information would be expecting? So we would expect to see any full amount of any material benefit paid to players or player coaches directly or indirectly. A statement and some information on any players that are employed in another capacity by the club. The confirmation of the declaration would need to be authorised by 4 club officers, and I put an asterisk there just so that I will re-emphasise that throughout the presentation in terms of who they will be and how they do that. It also is, in a sense, a requirement that is a self-certification against the various statutory, legal and immigration obligations that link to material benefit and payment of players. And there is also a question in there that says statement on any other payments or material benefits made to players to play rugby by other agents. It captures this, if it's by sponsors or other specific individuals, if they are paid to be playing for the club. So that's the kind of the capture of the information within the declaration that clubs will be filling in. And there are other considerations. The full aspect of this payment of players declaration is captured within Regulation 7, and you can find that on the website under the regulations. The whole regulation there and covers all those aspects. We have also produced with external accountants, certainly for Part A, some frequently asked questions documents, which basically deals with a whole host of elements. What is material benefit in relation to your particular circumstances of club? What would be captured? It's never going to be exhaustive, but it deals with the main factors as linked to sort of HMRC's processes. Part B of that particular FAQs document also deals with some of the regulatory processes that are in place, which is more on RFU focus. And if there are specific questions that you would like to ask or get some feedback on, we do have a tax helpline, which is run by a third-party provider, and the numbers on the screen there, and you could use that to ask any other specific questions that may or may not be captured within that FAQ document. We also have the help portal, which hopefully clubs are making use of, and that will hopefully, you can either ask a question in there if you don't know a specific way, whether that's any particular aspect, and we'll come back to you or redirect you. But it also has a host of information in terms of step-by-step guide for submitting a declaration, the FAQ document I talked about there, links to the regulation, but it also allows you to ask that question as well in terms of if you can't find it, and there's and we will keep adding to that as questions come in. We'll increase that FAQ, as well as the recording of this presentation this evening will go on there, so you can see it. You can watch that back or watch bits back if that would be helpful. Again, just to reiterate, the payment of player declaration now, as the previous one, in fact, is submitted and authorised within GMS. There is no printing of paper and signing and uploading. It's all done within GMS, and we'll go through that in a bit more detail in a little while. Again, I mentioned it as it's on the help portal, but there is a step-by-step guide. in terms of how you do that through GMS, and takes you through all the processes. I will touch on some of those later on this evening, but it is there if people want to look at that and or go to certain parts of it. And just to reiterate, the declaration went live on the 1st of March and will be open till the 30th of June. What are the exceptions? What isn't captured by the declaration or material benefit? Again, the FAQs will go into this in a bit more detail, but just some 3 really constantly asked questions in terms of the bullets here is that it doesn't capture legitimate out-of-pocket expenses as allowed under HMRC. It doesn't mean that you have to declare anything of playing kit, provision of reasonable amounts of playing kit, as it says on the screen, and also doesn't means you don't have to declare the provision of medical support or physio. Those would be exceptions and don't need to be captured within the declaration. What is it effectively capturing, and what is it effectively looking at? I mean, it's basic compliance, really. It is effectively asking the question that there's full compliance with HMRC processes and rules. That's where it comes from. If you have got players from overseas, that there is a full compliance with Home Office visa requirements. And really here, just to reiterate, I've mentioned this already, but the asterisk is there again. All clubs who need to submit an annual declaration will be authorised by floor club officials. This is all done within GMS. There are 3 default positions: the chair, treasurer, and secretary of each club, and you have the opportunity as the 4th authoriser to choose somebody else from a drop-down list. I'll again show you that in a bit more detail. And again, just to reiterate, with the changes that were made and agreed by RFU Council, this is for all clubs whose men's team play at level 3 to 7 is inclusive. So what that means is you would need to file a declaration, whether you pay players or not, to keep the RFU benefits. And again, just to reiterate, if you're a club at level 8 and below, the requirement is that you only need to file a declaration where you provide material benefit to players or player coach. Sorry, just flicking around with the screen there. So moving on to completing the declaration. So we're now getting into a little bit more of the information in terms of how do you do this. And so, as I mentioned, this is all done within the game management system, GMS. And the first kind of real bullets is that the person that is putting this in, they need to have a level 2 or above permission to be able to access the organisational profile on GMS. And the critical thing here is, before you start, is to ensure that the key club officers are correct and assigned to the relevant roles. As I said, the 3 default positions of chair, treasurer, and secretary, and 1 other. And the real critical thing there, because the authorization is done within GMS, is that the email address is correct, is really critical. If you do that and you go into the organisational profile and choose questionnaires from the side menu, as is on your screen, you need to select the club declaration for player payments 2022. As we're on the 8th of March, that should be there for you to access as required. Once you've opened that, next slide deals with this as well, is you click on it, open it up, and you can complete the questions within the declaration, which goes back to what is the material benefit, what are the statements, etc. There's a number. If you click yes, other boxes open. If you click no, you move on, in a sense. And then you also need to be choosing the individuals that be authorising the declaration by selecting their appropriate role and ensuring that the name of the role office holder is showing. And the key thing here is, once that has been completed and you've completed the questions, you've got the officers who are going to authorise it, the next process would be to submit it. You can save as you go. So, if you're adding bits in and you've got other information you need to gather, or there's something you want to ask, you can fill it in, save it, and you come back to exactly where you are. But once you're happy that all the information is correct, then press submit. Just to come back to this issue of who would be the authorizers, this is one of the pages within the declaration. So as I've said, and I reiterate, the default positions are chair, secretary, and treasurer, and make sure that details and their email addresses are up to date and correct. You will require a fourth authorizer, and the fourth authorizer can be from a drop-down list, and you can see some of them, some of the roles that could do that on the screen there. But you can see the button, the little yellow button in the bottom there, little drop-down box. You can then click on the person who's most appropriate for your club, whoever that may be, and then that will pull through their name into the system, and then you would submit the application, the declaration, as you move forward. One thing to note at this point is, if you save it, you can go back in and make changes. Once it is submitted, you can't make changes, and you would need to ask via GMS help desk for it to be reopened. That can be done, but we tend to do that only in exceptional cases do we try and do that. So please, before you submit, make sure that you're quite comfortable with the information you're providing. But that would be the route if there was something that obviously, a mistake. We all make them. So, that's how you would do that. But once you've submitted, you can't make any changes. You'd have to ask for it to be reopened. Once you press submit, each of the authorizers, so the chair, secretary, and treasurer, and the fourth person, whoever that may be, let's just, for the purposes of this, say the director of rugby, would all receive an email that looks like this. Obviously, it would be to the individual, and in order to authorize the declaration, each individual, including the person who submitted it, would need to click on, as in that thing there, need to click on the link and log in, and then it would take you through to you could read it, check that you're happy with what's being said in terms of the numbers or not, as the case may be, and then you would approve it. And on this slide, that's what you'll see as an authorizer. Somebody's filled it in. It'll be one of that four officers probably filled it in. You'll get the email, you click in, you log in, you can read through to make sure you're comfortable as an individual with what's been submitted. And if you are comfortable, you press approve. And that, as far as that individual person is concerned, is the end of that particular bit of the process. However, if you are a club whose males plus 15 players at level 6 below, and you have said yes to material benefit, specifically for player coach, because if you remember, the threshold is it's 0 for players, but you have the opportunity to have one player coach for maximum of 10,000, which 50% is towards playing. So if you are a club at level 6 and below, and you have said yes to material benefit, and one of those is a player coach, you would need to upload contract documentation. And you would need to do this via the attachment. So you can see on the screen there, below the questionnaires is the attachment. You'd need to upload the contract information into the attachments area. And what I've circled there is that as you've authorized the payment players declaration, it gives you a code, and it would be best to use that code in relation to any contract that you upload. But really, that's only applicable to level 6 and below, where you have said yes to providing material benefit for a player coach. If it's a player, for this purposes, there is no issues there. Just keep moving forward, because you will have lost RFU benefits. A couple of things to be aware of, and one of these is new for this season, is that there is some troubleshooting. So if you get the there's two troubleshooting error messages there. So if you get the first one, which is the one with the red validation errors, etc., all that will be telling you is that that there is some missing data within the declaration that you need to fill in. So if you get that pop up because you've been trying to submit or do something else, that will be what the issue is that there is something you haven't done. So as you can see on that, you said yes, you're paying, you pay material benefit, but you haven't actually put the value in there. So that's what the message will come up. However, at the bottom of the page, if you get the one that says you do not have permission to view the selected page, this is really just first point here is to make sure that you're logged in under your club in the top left-hand corner. Because you might be, if you're doing done a coaching course recently, you might be migrated to the RFU Twickenham Coaching Centre, Administration Centre, which means you're not necessarily logged in as a coach. But if you are logged in and you have permission to, and you're doing it correctly, and there's still an issue and there's still that error message, then that will require to raise a ticket with the GMS help desk. And that will need to be dealt with at our end. Hopefully that won't be the case, but just in case that does crop up. How do I know that I have submitted the declaration? So again, within question, so if you've submitted, somebody has pressed submit in the organisational profile under the club declaration, payment players declaration 2022, it should say in that status list as circled there, submitted. That means that it's submitted and you're waiting for authorizations. Again, need to log in through GMS, but there are three statuses there that if you have a look at, which are quite, fairly straightforward. So if in that circle it had said open, that would basically mean that either the declaration has not been started, or at the appropriate time it's just been saved. Somebody saved some information, has done no more. Submitted does what it says on the tin. The declaration has been filled in. Offices have been allocated for authorization, and the button submit has been pressed and it's in the system. If that button said close, and there's a couple of slides I'll show you that if the close basically means all approvals have been completed and the process has been completed. Again, how can I check who's still yet to sign off? So same slide in a sense here, but just to say, look, again, within the organizational profile tool, that says submitted, and it's basically saying that we're still waiting for signatory 1, which is the chair, signatory 2, which is the treasurer, and signatory 3, which is the secretary, which corresponds with the declaration, have still yet to authorize. Signatory 4 has authorized, and that's why you will see a date in that column. Once all 4 have got dates in, the submitted in the status list will change to closed, and the declaration has been, that process for submitting the declaration is finished. Again, looking at the declaration from a different angle, once the individual has approved, it will have a timestamp. So again, if I went back a slide, you can see that 4th signatory there is showing that they've authorized. From a different angle, looking at the declaration, you can see that again, it's Chloe Burgess, she's ahead of the game, that will appear here and here on the declaration as well. And you can obviously see there the corresponding that the chair, treasurer, and secretary are still yet to authorize the declaration. And again, this is a repetition, but once you get to closed in that column, and if you look across, you can see that all signatories have been signed off. The date stamp is in there, and that then will move to the closed status, and therefore the payment of players declaration for 2022, as far as your club is concerned, has been finished, and you can move on in that respect. So a couple of questions that we get occasionally is, how can I prove the declaration if I haven't received the email link? So there's 3 ways of doing this, and the first way is obviously what I've just been through. So you log in, the email comes, you receive it, you log in, you approve it, and you move forward from that. But occasionally, the email that is supposed to be automatically generated doesn't arrive in your inbox. So how could you access this if necessary? So again, you'd need to be logging in as the individual into GMS, and then you need to click on your profile as per the circle on this particular screen, and click on that, which will then bring up that drop-down box, and you click on the communications history and select, and you will be able to, from that process, you should be able to select the email to view for your payment of players, and then you can click view and the email, click the email from the 3 icons there as per there. That's what will open up, so you can see that it's in your communications history. You may not have received it. You should be able to view, click on the 3 little icons, it'll open up, and you can then move forward as per the previous process. So what then you will see is you'll be able to see a copy of that particular email, which you then click on, and then you can go forward and approve it as per previously. So I think I'm on reasonably good time. I've just got one final slide, really. And then we can maybe open up to questions or anything in the chat which hasn't been answered yet. Again, I mentioned earlier on in the presentation about some of the documents that are there to support as required. On the left-hand side is the opening page of the step-by-step guide. Again, most of the information in terms of how to do it through GMS that I've shown this evening will be included in there. The front page of that particular document, as you see there, which allows you to click through to specific items if they crop up. So if you've done most of it but need to sort of say, I've not received the email, you can click onto that. And there is a whole host of information that will help you on that step-by-step approach. On the right-hand side is the front page of the FAQs, which, as I said, is split into 2 parts. Part A is material benefit FAQs. Part B is regulatory. What you can see there is the front page, and also gives you the option whereby you can make use of our free tax helpline. And also, if you also want to need to post a question into the help portal, it also gives you a link there. So I think from a formal point of view, that is the end this evening.
Dave, are you able to just close your screen so everyone can come on, so it feels like we're all in the same room? And we haven't had any questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to ask a question, we have David and Alice here to answer. Please raise your hand or come off mic and ask the question. Or has the information been that good that there is no questions to be asked?
Be careful there, Ian.
Okay, I don't think there is any questions from anybody.
What I will say is that whilst I probably won't want to hear my voice back because I did stumble this evening, we will take this recording and also put it onto the help portal so you can review if need be.
Exactly. Okay. Final chance for questions? No. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you.
Just
oh,
to say,
there's one. There's one there.
I haven't got a question, but it all seems to be reasonably self-explanatory. So thank you. Rather than you sitting there thinking that we're all sitting here, not paying any attention or whatever. But no, it's all reasonably self-explanatory, and anything that wasn't clear now is. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thanks for that.
There is a quiz at the end of this.
Okay, thank you for joining us tonight, and all of you, and giving up your evening and your time. And hopefully you can go back to your clubs now and crack on with this over the next couple of months. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.